By looking at it, you wouldn't assume that 28 Days Later came out in 2002. Its distorted aesthetic has become more controversially discussed in recent years. Set in the apocalyptic wastelands of England, 28 Days Later follows a group of survivors trying to survive the not-so-undead. The major talking point I'll be discussing is how 28 Days Later's main aesthetic was influenced by the rising popularity of the digital cameras. 2001 A Space Odyssey was released in 1968, over 30 years prior to 28 Days Later, and yet it has a much clearer image. The first digital camera was released in the 70s, yet gained popularity in the filming industry towards the end of the 90s/early noughties. Digital filming, according to Anthony Doyle Mantle, director of photography for 28 Days Later, said that the digital cameras were much more practical for filming when it came to lighting, colour grading, as well as camera movement. But does this excuse the debatably bad visuals? Well, no. Danny Boyle certainly took a risk by creating the style he did, but his reasoning is more than justified. The tone of the film is bleak and depressive, and the digital look allows the style to be reflective of this. While I personally favour the style of film, it does leave less room to work with. The style that Boyle and Mantle were setting out for was more attainable with digital. Due to the filming taking place in Westminster, London and the M1, the cast and crew had considerably less time on their production schedule. Digital cameras were able to speed up this process significantly. As was aforementioned, there has been a lot of debate regarding the style of the film. Has it aged well? Was it really necessary? The answer to both is yes. While shooting on film may have created a more conventionally appealing aesthetic, the digital look allows a much more unsettling approach. Shooting on digital also allowed a more expansive production. Without digital, Mantle claims he would not have been able to emulate terrifying lighting imagery, as well as using real-world inspirations, such as the opening shot of Cillian Murphy lying completely naked in a purely lit set. Mantle wanted a brutal experience, and the almost dirty-looking visuals definitely benefit that. Touching back on the lighting, another development in production meant that one scene had to adopt the day-for-night filming technique. Mantle said that though through digital filming, they were able during production and post-production to make this more believable. It is also worth noting how all of these complaints are unaware of how much practicality was available within production, showing how these behind-the-scenes decisions were unnoticeable. Though many people have voiced their disdain for this style, it has had a large influence on modern-day zombie horror, be this Zack Snyder's 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake, which took inspiration from The Running Monsters, to the sequel 28 Weeks Later, using the same unsettling camera movement. It is undeniable that whether you would prefer 28 Days to be shot on film, it had a large impact on rejuvenating the zombie genre. The AMC TV show The Walking Dead, despite being platformed in a different display, also shares a well-known similarity by adopting the grainy look from the film that could have been seen in 28 Days Later. The Walking Dead was shot on 35mm film cameras for its first 10 seasons. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, production opted to start using digital as well. For similar reasons to Mantle, production was made easier with the use of digital filming. They were able to implement new camera movements and techniques, as well as relocating a wider colour grading usage. So, even 20 years after 28 Days Later premiered, its choice to use digital over film is still being echoed throughout filming production.